In the quietest corner of the shelter, a small gray cat named Milo cried through the night. No one knew how deeply he was hurting. He didn't eat, barely moved, and never looked anyone in the eye. Milo had been dropped off just 2 days earlier. The woman who brought him, kind, older, and tired, said he hadn't been the same since his owner passed away. "He won't eat. He won't come when I call him," she said, holding back tears. "If we can manage, we'll come back for him." Then she left. Milo hadn't stopped crying since. That evening, Dr. Bennett was checking on the animals. When he reached Milo's cage, he paused. "You're still not eating, little guy," he whispered, kneeling down. Milo didn't respond, just curled up tighter. Then something caught Dr. Bennett's eye. A glint of metal beneath Milo's collar. He leaned in, brushed the fur aside, and squinted at the tag. His brow furrowed. Then he leaned in even closer. "What the?" he muttered. He stood up fast and called down the hallway. "Jenna? Can you come here for a second?" Jenna, the shelter assistant, appeared moments later. She looked from Dr. Bennett to Milo. "What's going on?" she asked. "The name on this tag, it's not what we were told," he said slowly. Jenna blinked. "The woman said his name was Milo. Her name was Donna. And her husband was Eric, remember?" Bennett nodded. "That's what's strange, this tag says something else entirely." Milo had arrived with a story of loss. Donna had said he only listened to Eric, that he'd been his shadow. And ever since Eric died, Milo had grown quiet, distant, unreachable. The family had done what they could. But in the end, they just couldn't reach him. And so, with heavy hearts, they left him here. As Dr. Bennett gently returned Milo to his kennel, he noticed how the little cat tucked his face into his paws. A soft, broken sound escaping from his throat. Bennett had seen grieving animals before. But Milo's sorrow felt deeper, heavier, personal. That night, something wouldn't let Bennett rest. He found himself back at the kennel, kneeling again. "Milo, can I take another look?" he asked quietly. He reached out, slow and careful. But Milo suddenly hissed, loud, defensive, and sharp. Bennett froze. Okay, I won't touch it," he whispered. That wasn't fear. It was protection. The cat wasn't guarding himself. He was guarding the collar. "You're holding on to something, aren't you?" Bennett murmured. He stood up, thoughtful. Then returned a few minutes later, with a piece of chicken and a soft blue toy. "Let's try this a little differently," he said. He placed the food just inside the cage, then backed away. Milo didn't move at first. But then, slowly, he crept forward, sniffed, and took the bite. Progress. Bennett spoke gently, just sharing stories from his past. His own cats, the way one of them used to guard a shoelace, like it was gold. Milo didn't respond much, but his posture shifted. Just slightly. "You've got a story too, huh?" Bennett whispered. Milo looked up briefly. For the first time, their eyes met. Bennett smiled. "Let's see what you're hiding, buddy." He moved a little closer this time. Slow, gentle. And finally, for just a moment, Milo lifted his head. Bennett caught a clear glimpse of the tag. He froze. His breath caught. "Jenna!" he called, voice urgent now. She came running. "What's wrong?" she asked. He pointed to the collar. "This name, it's not Taylor. It's not Milo either." Jenna frowned. "But we wrote it all down, Donna Taylor. Eric James Taylor. That's what they told us." She turned and hurried off to check the intake forms. Bennett stayed, staring at the metal tag. The letters were worn down, faded from time. But the name etched there was clear enough. And it didn't match anything they'd been told. Something was wrong. Very wrong. Back at his desk, Dr. Bennett sat in silence. Milo's file lay open in front of him. He flipped through every page, past visits, old notes, medical records. Each line felt like a puzzle piece. But the full picture was still missing. One thing didn't sit right. Milo had been listed as a patient for 6 years. But judging by his condition and appearance, he had to be at least 10. So where had he been before? Who took care of him before he came here? And why was the name on his tag scratched out? There was only one place to look next. The Taylor residence. Dr. Bennett stood and grabbed his coat. On his way out, he stopped to speak to Jenna and Marcus. "I'm heading out for a bit. Call me if anything urgent comes up," he said. They nodded, already used to his sudden hunches. In his car, he typed the address into the GPS. The caller's mystery kept clawing at the edges of his mind. He couldn't shake the feeling that something bigger was hiding beneath the surface. Why had someone tried to erase that name? And who was Milo, really? As the car hummed down the road, the questions kept building. Was he part of another family? Had someone deliberately hidden his identity? And if so, why? He pulled into the driveway of the Taylor home. A large house with weathered brick and towering windows. It stood quietly, surrounded by trees that seemed to whisper with the wind. Bennett stepped out, heart beating a little faster. He walked to the heavy front door and knocked. It creaked open a moment later. A young woman stood there, clearly not Donna. "Hi," Bennett began. "I'm here about Milo. Donna's cat. I was hoping to speak with her." The woman looked surprised but not alarmed. "Oh, Mom's not here right now," she replied. "But maybe I can help?" Bennett hesitated, unsure how much to say. Still, he had come this far. "Would it be all right if I looked at some family photos? Maybe from 6 or 7 years ago. I'm trying to find out a bit more about Milo's past," he explained. The woman, Jane, blinked at the strange request. But then shrugged. "That's unusual, but sure. Let me see what I can find." She stepped aside to let him in. As she disappeared upstairs, Bennett took in the house. It was grand, filled with art, antique furniture, and the quiet weight of old stories. His eyes were drawn to a painting on the wall. A large oil portrait of Eric Taylor. The eyes in the painting seemed to follow him. Watching, knowing. Then, on a nearby table, a photograph caught his attention. Donna and Eric stood smiling. And between them, curled comfortably, was Milo. His fur looked brighter then. And there it was, the same collar around his neck. Bennett leaned in, studying the photo. The tag was clearer here. And even though some of the letters were partially hidden, he could see enough. His breath caught. The name on the tag wasn't Eric's. And it wasn't Donna's either. Before he could take it all in, Jane returned, holding a photo album close to her chest. "Why are you so interested in that picture?" she asked, a bit more cautious now. Bennett paused. He could lie. Or tell her the truth. "I've just grown attached to Milo, especially after what happened to Eric," he said honestly. Jane's face softened. A flicker of pain passed through her eyes. "My dad found Milo after he'd been hit by a car. He was just a little thing, terrified and shaking. It took him days to come out from under the couch," she said, her voice tinged with nostalgia. Bennett listened intently. "Why didn't your father bring him to a vet?" he asked gently. "Oh, he tried. But every time Milo saw a car, he bolted. He'd hide for hours. Eventually, my dad just decided to treat him at home," she said. "He's been with us for 6 years now." Bennett froze. 6 years? That lined up with the clinic records. But it still didn't explain the earlier years. The erased name, the mismatched identity. They sat together flipping through the old album. Bennett spotted another photo, a much older one. Milo again, sitting near a fireplace. The same collar around his neck. Something about it stood out. "Has he always worn this collar?" he asked. Jane paused, thinking. "Yeah. I think he has," she said quietly. Bennett leaned back, eyes narrowing. "Do you remember anyone ever saying where he might have come from? Before your dad found him?" Jane shook her head slowly. "No. We never knew. He just showed up." They kept turning pages, one after another, until one photo made Dr. Bennett pause. It was old, faded slightly at the corners. But there, in the middle, was Milo. Younger, but unmistakable. And on his collar, a tag that was still perfectly clear. Bennett leaned in, heart pounding. The name was different. Not scratched, not hidden. Just there, easy to read. This might be it," he whispered. "Jane, do you mind if I borrow this photo? It could help answer some questions," he asked. She hesitated for a moment, then gave a small nod. "All right, just please bring it back," she said softly. Back at the clinic, Bennett placed the photograph on the counter in front of Jenna and Marcus. "Look at this," he said, pointing. "Emily Harrington." The name was right there, clear as day. A quick online search confirmed it. A woman by that name lived just 2 towns over. The timeline, the area. It all fit. Bennett's fingers trembled slightly as he dialed her number. The line rang once, twice. "Hello?" a soft voice answered. "Hi, this might sound strange, but I think I may have found your cat," he said carefully. His voice steady, but touched with caution. There was a pause on the other end. Then, barely above a whisper, came the reply. You think you found Charlie?" Her voice cracked with disbelief. "I believe so," Bennett said gently. "Would you be willing to come to the clinic and see for yourself?" Another pause. Then, a breathless trembling. Yes, of course. I'll come right away." The drive was a blur for Emily. The memory of losing Charlie haunted her. The posters, the calls, the long, silent days of hoping. She had tried to move on, but the ache had never left. Now, there was a chance. When she arrived at the clinic, Dr. Bennett met her at the door. "Right this way," he said quietly. They walked through the hallway, the scent of antiseptic and soft meows echoing in the background. Her heartbeat thundered in her ears. He stopped at one of the kennels. "He's in there," Bennett said, stepping aside. Inside, curled tightly in the corner, was a gray tabby. His green eyes, watchful, distant. A low, cautious yowl escaped him. A sound full of warning and fear. Emily froze. That sound. She knew it. She had heard it countless times when he was scared. Her chest tightened. Was it really him? She stepped closer, slowly, carefully, and knelt beside the enclosure. "Charlie!" she whispered. The cat froze. His ears twitched. His eyes widened ever so slightly. She reached out, palm open, not touching, just waiting. A long moment passed. Then Milo, or Charlie, leaned forward. He sniffed her fingers. Then, gently, slowly, rubbed his head against her hand. A deep purr rumbled from his chest. Emily gasped. Tears spilled down her cheeks. "Oh my God, it's really you!" she choked out. "I lost him 6 years ago. During a move, he got out of the carrier and vanished." Her voice broke with emotion. "I searched for weeks, for months. But I never found him." Bennett stood nearby, watching silently, moved by the tenderness of the moment. Emily reached through the bars, running her fingers through his fur. Like touching a memory she thought she'd lost forever. For a moment, the world stood still. But just as that moment settled, footsteps echoed from the hallway. It was Yara, the clinic assistant. Her expression uneasy. "Dr. Bennett," she said, voice lowered. "There's someone here to see you." "Grace Carter." Bennett turned. His brow furrowed. Dr. Bennett's brow furrowed slightly. Yara nodded, her eyes shifting between him and Emily. "She looks upset," Yara said softly. Bennett exhaled, then glanced at Emily. She gave him a small nod, as if to say, "Go ahead. I'll wait." "I'll be right back," he whispered. He stepped into the lobby. And there, near the front desk, stood Grace Taylor. Her hands were clenched tightly. Her face, aged with time, held a quiet sorrow. And something else. Uncertainty. For a moment either of them spoke. "I heard you found a cat," Grace said finally. Her voice was steady, but delicate. Bennett nodded. "Yes, we did." Grace swallowed hard. Is it Charlie?" Behind him. Emily had quietly followed. She stopped a few steps behind Bennett. And then, slowly, stepped forward. Her eyes met Grace's. And in that brief moment, something passed between them. Not words, but recognition. The conversation that followed wasn't easy. There were pauses, tears. Moments when neither knew quite what to say. Emily spoke first. About the heartbreak of losing Charlie. About the endless days of searching. Of waking up hoping for a miracle. And going to bed with none. "I never stopped looking for him," she whispered. "Even after years. I still expected him to show up one day." Grace listened in silence, her fingers tightening on the strap of her purse. Then, in a quiet voice, she began her part of the story. How she and her late husband had found a frightened, injured cat wandering near their home. How it took weeks to earn his trust. How, over time, he became family. "We named him Milo," she said gently. "He didn't like strangers. But he'd sit beside my husband for hours. He helped us through a lot." There was no anger. No accusations. Just two women. Each carrying their own truth. Each loving the same cat. As they spoke, the distance between them slowly faded. Their stories, once separate, wove together like pieces of the same thread. Dr. Bennett stood quietly nearby, watching as the tension dissolved into something softer. A long pause settled over the room. Then Grace gave a quiet sigh. "I suppose he's always had two families, hasn't he?" Emily blinked. Then, after a moment, she smiled gently. "Yes. I think he has." What followed was a decision. Unexpected. But right. Charlie would have both homes. Both women would share the joy of seeing him happy, healthy, and loved. It wasn't about claiming. It was about giving. and understanding. Later, back in the kennel, Charlie sat curled on a soft blanket, his green eyes brighter now, his body more relaxed. He glanced between the two women as they took turns stroking his fur. He purred softly. Content, calm. Home. Dr. Bennett couldn't help but smile. The circle had closed. And not in the way he'd imagined. Sometimes, love isn't about ownership. It's about letting go of boundaries and choosing kindness instead. Did this story touch your heart? Would you have made the same decision Grace and Emily did? Let us know in the comments below. And if you enjoyed this story, please subscribe, leave a like, and share it with someone who loves animals just as much as you do. Thank you so much for listening. We'll see you in the next one. Take care, and have a beautiful day.